So the paperwork has been signed. At last, an agreement between the US and Iran to extend the ceasefire between the two countries has gone into effect.
Wait, they're just extending the ceasefire? I thought they reached a deal already. I don't know, man. This whole thing doesn't make any sense anymore, so. I mean, who even cares at this point?
This was not easy.
It spans just a
Yeah.
page and a half and runs to 14 points. Since Donald Trump's war on Iran began, it's been one of his most unpopular ventures. But now it seems
Yep.
there could be an end to it. And the deal includes a $300 billion fund to rebuild Iran. So what else?
You're gonna give them $300 billion? I thought the deal was no nuclear weapons for Iran, opening the Strait of Hormuz. Now you're giving them money for? And it's not even a deal, it's an extension of a ceasefire.
Is in the agreement, who's caved to make it happen, and will it actually work? So
Probably
one of
not.
the key things in the deal is that it is a ceasefire on all fronts, and that is something that Iran insisted on, that
That is something that no one is going to respect.
it should include what's happening in Lebanon, and that's where Israel is fighting the Iranian-backed group Hezbollah. Now, Iran made this a red line, and it's actually the first point in the agreement. Then there's the Strait of Hormuz, so important to the global economy. It's been all but closed by Tehran for months, and later the US imposed its own blockade on Iranian ships. Tehran has agreed to let commercial vessels start moving straight away, and the US has agreed that ships can travel to and from Iranian ports again. That's obviously key for Iran and its economy. Now, something else very important for Iran is that it should get sanctions relief, but only as part of a final deal. And this is all going to be discussed over the course of the next 60 days. 60 days is a very, very short period to come to a wide-ranging agreement, but it can be extendable by mutual consent. So who got the most from the deal, and has Donald Trump caved? That's an interesting question. A lot of people do believe that
He sure did cave.
Iran got many of the things that it would have wanted from this. I think the Iranians knew that Donald Trump was desperate to find an end to the war. And although he has threatened that if Iran, in his words, doesn't behave, then the US will go back to bombing Iran. I think the Iranians knew that Donald Trump wanted a way out, and they have clearly driven a hard bargain. So what were Donald Trump's objectives in the war, and were they achieved? Well, I think part of the problem is that the objectives kept shifting, but you'll remember that the war began at the end of February with Israel and the US attacking Iran, and the
Nuclear
Iranian
facilities.
Supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who'd been in power for decades, was killed. But then he was quickly replaced
By his son. Yeah.
The regime remained. It became more entrenched. So he certainly didn't achieve an objective of regime change. So then there were the military targets, and there were thousands of bombing raids. And what you saw hit was Iran's nuclear program, also military targets. But Iran was still able to fire missiles at the Gulf right up until the end of the war. So again, it didn't succeed there. If you want to talk about very specific achievements, the Iranian Navy was sunk at the beginning of the war, but in fact that didn't make much of a difference because Iran still has small boats that it's able to use in the Strait of Hormuz.
They have drones, they have small boats. They have mines all over the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, you're not gonna get far with them. What do they need a navy for anyway? You're the one attacking them at their home turf, so.
And then it still had missiles it could use. And I think the key thing is that during the course of the war, Iran discovered a very, very potent new weapon, which is its ability to control the Strait of Hormuz and have an impact on the global economy.
Yeah, they had leverage. And leverage is everything. Trump kept talking about the art of the deal this, the art of the deal that. But there you are. They had the winning card.
Economy, and that's a weapon it now knows that it has and it can keep. So Iran has reiterated its commitment not to develop nuclear weapons. That was a key point for Donald Trump and something that he would have very much wanted to see in writing. It's also agreed that it will dilute some of the enriched material it has already. That is material that can't be made into a nuclear bomb yet, but is fairly close to that level. And then down the road, there will be discussions on to what level Iran can enrich uranium. It's always said that its program was for peaceful purposes, but the international community didn't believe it. I think one thing that will be key is whether UN inspectors are able to get in there and verify what is happening. And they were in there before Donald Trump pulled.
Yeah, this whole thing broke out. They were there part of the Barack Obama deal, so we just went full circle at this point.
Out of a agreement that was reached in 2015 between President Barack Obama and Iran. Now, under that agreement, Iran could only enrich uranium to about 3.6 something percent. Since Donald Trump essentially tore up that agreement, said it was a bad deal, Iran has gone ahead and enriched
up to 15
uranium
maybe
to a level that has really alarmed the world. But this is all very, very technical stuff that will be discussed over the next few weeks. The two countries also agree not to interfere in each other's affairs. What will that mean for Donald Trump's promises to help Iranian protesters? So he made those promises back in January during the nationwide uprising, which had actually started with economic problems, and then it became about everything many Iranians hated about the regime. There were protests across the country and they were brutally crushed, and there were promises by Donald Trump to come and help the protesters. Many Iranians who had hoped at the beginning of the war that the conflict would mean the end of the regime, really felt that they were kind of left between a rock and a hard place. They didn't like what the war was doing to their country. They were also, many of them, really desperate to see the back of the regime. And now they feel despondent. They are left with a regime that's even more entrenched.
Yeah. I still don't understand why was Trump so invested in this uprising that started in Iran. Doesn't make sense. But hey, it's politics.
Entrenched, which is carrying out executions, and where they fear that human rights will be possibly even less respected than in the past. What will this mean economically for Iran, the US, and the wider world? Well, the reason why this matters so much is because it's such a busy shipping lane, the Strait of Hormuz, and because of all the oil and the gas that's not been able to flow. So it is critical to countries around the world that traffic will now flow again. Because it wasn't just oil, there were also fertilizers that couldn't be transported. And there were real fears of food prices and global hunger on account of that. For Iran, this deal is economically very important. Its economy was in...
Yeah, very lucrative for Iran. I think by far they're the winners in this deal. $300 billion to rebuild the country, the US to withdraw its troops, they keep full control of the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah. I mean, they did great. That's all I can say.
Dire straits back in January when those protests started. The war has only compounded the economic problems. And for Iran, what it wants is sanctions relief. So the lifting of sanctions, that will only happen if it meets its nuclear commitments. President Trump has made that clear. He's also said that if Iran, in his words, doesn't behave, then the US will go back to bombing. And
To
then
bombing,
you've got
yeah.
this $300 billion reconstruction fund. At the moment, we don't actually know where the money's going to come from for that. But President Trump has said that the US taxpayer is not going to pay a cent into it. So is this now a done deal, and will it
Then who's gonna pay for it? I mean, that money has to come from somewhere. I mean,
last? I think the important thing to remember is this is just a memorandum of understanding. It is by no means a peace deal, and I think there
so it means nothing by the end. By the end of the day, nothing was achieved. Everyone kept talking about the deal, the deal, the deal. There's no deal happening. It's more of a draft more than anything. Ah, brother.
there is plenty of scope in the vague language in these 14 points for misunderstandings. It was brokered by Pakistan with the mediation of other countries, key countries, including Qatar. It matters very, very much to Gulf countries who are so badly impacted by the war. So there is an awful lot of global goodwill invested in making it work, but there is plenty that could go wrong, plenty of scope for misunderstandings. And then I think Iran will want to play a long game. It will want to string this out. So what are we going to see over the next few weeks? It's really, really hard to say, particularly with such an unpredictable American president.
I think we're gonna see more of the same. Pretty much.